Well, hi, this is Jay Arthur. Let's be clear about something. Nobody wants to read your spreadsheet. I want you to just get over that concept. No one can read a spreadsheet except for a CFO and some CPAs and stuff. And unfortunately, I know that way too many people are trying to do that. You know how I know? Microsoft Excel actually went out and keeps track of how people use Microsoft Excel. 60% of the 650 million users out there use it for lists and reports. Now, they estimate that 20% go deeper and 20% are gurus. I think these are all swags. But how do I know that people are making their spreadsheet so that people can read it? Well, because 54% of all spreadsheets out there contain merge and center. Now, merge and center is how most people try and put titles over things so that they can make it more readable. So what do you do about that? Well, here's an example of a spreadsheet that somebody built, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute, but look at this. So here's somebody who's actually merged and center. You see merge and center up here, right? So they've merged their title in here. Now, if you just unmerge that, you can right-click, and having selected all those cells, go to Format Cells, and use, under Alignment, you can use Center Across Selection. Now, what'll that do? Well, it'll do the same thing, except it won't cause you problems when you try and chart or pivot data or something like that. So first of all, that's wrong. Now, the other thing I know is most people, you can tell that they've tried to make it pretty because they've put it up into horizontal rows. So January, February, March, blah, 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 2016, they stack them all on top of each other. But this makes it impossible to pivot the data. It makes it impossible to chart the data. It's data that's designed to show something, but again, who can look at this and tell if there's anything going on? Are there signals in this data, or is it just noise? Now, for example, if I take this data, and I'm going to select just the data here. So if I select that data and say Insert Line Chart, because again, this is time series data, right? We need to use line charts for time series data, not bar charts, right? We're going to get what looks like a spaghetti diagram. And it's going to have some things on the end here, but since we didn't put our dates in the right column, or right row, then we're not going to know what series this is. It's going to spread it all out like this, and what a mess, right? So we might have to go try and tweak this just a little bit to make it more readable. But if you look at this, what a mess. I can't tell anything. So what do we have here? We have a mess. All right, so what do we have to do? Well, we have to take this data and get it in a format that can be read by machines, like Microsoft Excel. Once we put it into a column, if we take all of this stuff, right, if I take all of this, and let's say I copy that and go over to another sheet, I can do a paste, special, transpose, and I just want to put the values in there, right? I can get my data in here. Does that make sense? So this is what we're trying to do. Now, once we have it in a column, we might want to actually, instead of January, February, whatever, things that we can't sort, let's put in a real date. So I changed all of these into an actual date. So here's month and year, company sales. Now if we take this data and insert a line chart, we're going to get something that tells us what's going on over time. Now the problem here, of course, is that we can't really tell if there's any signal in there, if there's any noise. We still have to clean up the chart, get rid of a bunch of things, change our lower limits here. Since this is no longer useful, we might have to get rid of that. We could actually get a chart that shows us what our sales are over time. But we don't know if this dip at the bottom is bad and these points at the top are good. What's going on here? Why did it go up and down? Is this a signal or is this just noise? Now the only way to tell that is to take that data and using the performance chart wizard, we can go create an individuals and moving range chart that'll show us what's going on with our sales. Is there anything special going on or not? And so here you can see we had some monthly variation that was pretty low, so those little red points mean there was something special going on here. But in general, we have a pretty stable sales process. It's 155 whatevers per month, and it hasn't changed. Now, gee, maybe if we'd like sales to go up, that would be a good thing. But in general, look at this. So there's really no red points here, so there's nothing special going on. There's nothing to fix, all right, unless we want to increase sales overall, in which case we need to move the center line up. Now, the other thing we can do with this data is sometimes I find people then take their data and then they start putting quarterly summaries into their data. Right? And so they stick that right in the middle of the whole process. Well, Excel will summarize this stuff for you if you learn how to use pivot tables. Now, if we take this data and insert a chart, right, all those totals really screw up the whole picture. So it's not really a useful picture. Now, what could we do instead? Well, we could take our data here. We could insert a pivot table. And there's our data. Now we could stick in by month and year. We can put that in that column. And we can take company sales, drop it into this column. We might want to make that a sum. So here are all of our sales. Now, with Microsoft Excel in the pivot table, you can right-click on that and say Group. And I want to group it by quarters and years instead. And that would give you summaries by year of your quarters. So once we get the data into a column, we can start to do something with it. But when your data looks like this, there's nothing to be done there, right? You've tried to make it easy to read for people, and the trick is to make it easy to read by Excel, because then, and only then, can we take that and turn that into charts that tell us stories and pivot things and summarize them in useful ways. Nobody wants to read your spreadsheet. Stop trying to make it pretty. Stop trying to make it so that people can read it. That's a very manual process, and people are prone to making mistakes when they read things, right? Turn your data into a column that you can then summarize, chart, and do something with. I'm Jay Arthur. I think that's step number one, right? Because you don't want to be like all those Excel users that are just using Excel as a list building tool to create idiot reports that no one reads, because nobody wants to read your spreadsheet.